Welcome to the Community Forum. My name is John Gogliettino. I'm your host. This evening we're again turning gears and going in the direction of the law. In an effort to have full disclosure, I am a member of a B&I group, and a fellow member of this group is Greg Smith and I. And Greg's my guest tonight. We're going to be just talking about the law and the various things he gets into, and he's got a very interesting practice. So I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, John. It's good to be here.
You're welcome. First of all, let's talk about yourself and your family, and you're located,
Richfield.
I know where you are, but our friends out there don't know where you are. So you're in Richfield, and you live in Richfield, and you're practice in Richfield, right?
Practice in Richfield. I go all over the state.
Okay. What schools did you go to?
As an undergrad, I went to Yale,
and then
law school, I went to Boston University, and
not too shabby.
no, it's good.
And where do you practice?
I have.
Well, obviously you practice in Connecticut, but do you have like general practices, or do you have mainly?
My focus is on school-related material. When I got out of law school back in 1977, and I actually got training in the law before I went to law school. When I got out of college, I got a job in Washington, D.C., working for President Nixon during the Watergate impeachment hearings, which was pretty great stuff for a kid just out of college.
Yeah, that's impressive.
I was a paralegal. I had to learn how to do legal research on my own. I had to fetch coffee and paper clips for the attorneys on the staff of Nixon's defense lawyers. They had been recruited from all over the federal government to come and try to help him. They were all Republicans, obviously.
Right.
And I was, up to that point, I'd been a Democrat, so the FBI went around and interviewed my friends from college of whether I was worthy to serve the federal government, and they were all shocked to see an FBI guy show up at their doorstep, but they all had nothing bad about me to say. The worst thing they had to say about me was that I had been a student protest one time and been running from tear gas in the National Guard. But that didn't disqualify me, apparently. So Nixon's lawyers brought me on, and
so you worked in the Justice Department.
It wasn't. I was working with Justice Department lawyers. We were technically part of the executive office, so I worked in the building next to the White House, and I remember going up to Capitol Hill to the Watergate hearings. On TV you saw all these congressmen, but we had a little room off to the side where we gathered to smoke a cigarette and talk strategy with the congressmen and the lawyers. And I didn't do a good enough job because it didn't stop them from taking it pretty far.
They almost got to impeachment, and then he resigned.
He resigned, yeah.
Was it August 9th, I think, in 1974?
August 9th, that's good memory.
Yeah.
That's better memory than I had. I'd split town by then to go to law school.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
So you not only do you practice in Connecticut, but you've also got federal experience.
That's right. That's right.
Bar.
That's right. I didn't go into law right away. I went into education first. I was a school teacher, first in special education and then in history, public high schools mostly, in Connecticut and Massachusetts.
So what got you to change? The early experience with the federal exposure, and you felt you needed to have more impact in the world, or?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I wanted to do it on a day-to-day level with students, and I'd always been good with kids, and I wasn't ready to be a lawyer. So I needed to get my feet under me, and there's a lot about being a teacher that's similar to being a lawyer. You're on your feet all day, and you're making a case for something, and you're doing it in front of a group of kids instead of a client or instead of a judge. But a lot of it's the same, as you would imagine. And it gives you the confidence to speak on your feet, because if you can't do that, if you can't carry a class of kids along with you, you're going to be in hot water real fast.
Right.
So
Exactly.
so standing
No
up,
impact.
no impact. So
So it's a bigger impact in law, especially in the federal district court in Bridgeport, which is one of the places you.
that's
tend to
true.
be. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, my only previous experience had been in the Supreme Court, and
And that was during the.
that was during
During the
those here.
Nixon.
Yeah. So
So you taught school, and about when did you decide to go to law school?
I went to law school in '74, got out in '77, and didn't come back to law until 2010.
Wow, a long time to feeling your oats a little bit.
It's a long time to feel ready to do
I
it.
didn't realize it was that soon. You know,
It was that long.
yeah,
Yeah.
that long, right? Yeah. So you dealt with students so much so that some of your practice, or a lot of your practice, has to do with kids' issues or student issues, right?
That's right. That's right.
Would you give us some examples of some of the things you've been involved with
I
students?
do a lot of expulsions, and I do bullying and harassment.
Bullying is a big issue.
I know it is. I know it is.
And all the interaction, the news that goes on, you know, you hear about this teacher getting involved with the student here, and this another teacher getting involved with a student there, and there's a lot of that. And then there's some that goes the other way, you know, that maybe it's initiated by the student, and for some reason or other they're not smart enough, even though they're teachers, to stay away or whatever, or report it or whatever. I'm sure you get both sides of that a little bit, you know, when you're getting in the cases like that.
I get parents calling me to say that their child has been bullied, and Connecticut's law on the subject is pretty specific. There's just like 3 elements. Bullying has to be something that's repeated. So if someone says or does something to you the first time, it's not bullying. Although you could have a bully say something to one person and then something to another person, and that second time, even though it's a different person, now it's bullying. Or you could have the same victim be picked on by 2 different people. The second time it happens, it's now bullying. And it doesn't have to be.
And your evidence is if when it goes on the internet.
Well, that's the different.
Yeah.
The law breaks it down into things that happen on school grounds and things that happen off school grounds. If it's on school grounds, if it's any kind of gesture, you don't have to make contact with someone. You can just look at someone the wrong way or say something the wrong way.
If they feel threatened or whatever.
If they feel threatened, if they feel like they're in danger of being harmed, if it creates a hostile environment.
That's not harassment?
Well, let me take it slowly. So there's that on school grounds, and and school grounds is broad. It could be at the bus stop. That's part of school. It could be on the school bus. It could be at the football game.
Or the library.
Or the library. Not even technically on school grounds. And so it's bullying if it's repeated, if it's on school grounds, if it's a gesture of some kind, and it's picking on you for some reason, either because of your race or your sex, or they don't like the way you look, or something. It could be anything. And it makes you feel like you're in danger or harm or hostile, then it's bullying. Then the other category that you were talking a minute ago about internet is off school grounds, at home or at the mall. If you get something from someone on an electronic device that repeated, that's picking on you, that gives you those same feelings and causes you to not be able to get an education when you come back, then that's bullying too.
Or is it even
Well,
bigger than that? If it's a town-wide type of thing, something. Hey, that's so and so. People start pointing to you.
Oh, to the victim?
Yeah.
That
If it's on the internet and the kids tell the parents, and it may not be true, but they're, that's what I mean. It's a combination of bullying and harassment. When does it become harassment? I think the two are a little bit tied together.
Harassment is a little bit different thing. Harassment is bullying, but picking on a protected class, race,
I see.
sex, disability. Once you cross that line from I don't like the way you look to one of those categories, now it's a different thing. Now it doesn't have to be repeated. The first time you do something like that, it's now racial harassment or sexual harassment if the impact is strong enough. And now you've got federal civil rights laws involved. So I have a case of a student that was picked on by classmates on the basis of her sex, and we wound up in federal district court in Bridgeport against the school district, because what you're doing is you're holding the school liable for letting this happen. Schools have a tough job. A lot goes on in schools that teachers can't be responsible for, that administrators can't be responsible for. The law doesn't say that they're responsible for everything that happens. That's not possible. That's why bullying can't be the first time it happens, because you cannot guarantee that nothing's ever going to get said. But
they've written the law that way in the sense that, the second time, because a lot of times they don't believe, or not in this school, this can't be happening here, or it can't be Johnny Jones, he would never do that. They almost like need proof or something.
yeah,
And then the second time happens, or someone else notices it or whatever, and it's a little easier to collaborate. But then it's actually something happened. Yeah.
it's not just, she said, I don't like the way your clothes look today. It's once it happens the second time, now you really have to look into it. The law says that a student can anonymously report a bullying incident, or a parent can do it in writing, although I don't think it should have to be in writing, and I think you could challenge that part of the law. But anyway, once an administrator, a teacher, or even a janitor hears of this, they have a duty to see if it's worth investigating. And if they find that it is verified as an act of bullying, then there has to be punishment. Of course, their privacy. You can't, as a school, tell everyone how you're punishing one student and then spread his or her name across the school. It has to be a secret.
Yeah, it's got to be a secret thing.
A lot of time, parents of victims are dissatisfied because they never know what actually happened to the bully. And the schools don't have a legal responsibility to say what they've done.
We don't do public flogging for it.
That's a good example. Yeah. So they only have to say, we investigated, we've taken steps. In the case of harassment, they have to do a lot more. They have to make sure it doesn't happen again, and they may even be responsible for letting it happen in the first place. If you have racial harassment someplace, it infects the whole student body potentially, and so you've got to take serious.
If an act happens, whatever it may be, and an epithet is put on the wall or something, and everybody's affected by it. So the punishment's got to fit the crime, so to speak, if the whole body's affected by something. So, X equals Y, or even Z punishment, you know.
It's, people want to sue a school for bullying, but you can't. There's no such thing as suing a school for bullying. If someone gets hurt, if there are damages somehow, then you have a cause of action. So that if one student punches another in the course of bullying and the victim gets physically hurt, now you have a case of negligence against the school if you can prove that they should have known about this bullying and didn't take steps, didn't investigate, or didn't take enough steps to control it.
And there have been cases where bullying has led kids to take their life.
Oh, well, that's everyone's fear. That's what I get calls from, people saying,
it's continuing, and it's not getting nipped in the bud.
I don't want my daughter to be the one that gets on the news because we didn't do enough. And I've got a friend that became an assistant principal up in Massachusetts. In his first week on the job, he called me and said, "Greg, what do? Every day I get kids in my office all day long saying so-and-so said something to me." I said, "Jeremiah, you have to look at them all. You have to investigate them all. It's just, you can't ignore any of them because you never know, and it's your job to look into it. You just can't not look into it." So that's, of course, if it's harassment, it's...
I was going to say, how pervasive is harassment in Connecticut, the so-called liberal state? You want to call the state that's a little more liberal than, let's say, Iowa or whatever. But is it a little more pervasive than we think? We think we're in liberal Connecticut, and actually there's a lot more of harassment going on. In other words, whether it be a Puerto Rican that's not liked, or I'm trying to come up with something that's been in the news, the black-white issue.
I haven't seen, personally and professionally, I have not
seen a lot
come
of that
across much
in this area.
Racial incidents.
Yeah.
It's more likely to be sexual, and it's more likely to be on the basis of a disability. I mean, you know how mean kids can be, how cruel. And
the cases you've seen are those two areas then?
Yeah, on the basis of sex or on the basis of disability. Someone who's special ed child, student gets picked on, and in their cases, they don't even have to be aware of what's going on so much as feeling that it's a hostile environment. And the school's got a responsibility to enable those kids to come to a safe environment. And if the child feels like it's not friendly and safe, then they can't get an education, and the school is responsible for letting that happen. And so you got courts ordering districts to have educational programs to educate the whole student body about why this is wrong. And there was a school district in New York, another liberal, forward-thinking, you would think, where the federal government came in and found anti-Semitism rampant, they thought anyway, among the school district, people putting swastikas on kids' notebooks, things like that. The administrators themselves were Jewish and were taking steps against the harassers and trying to teach things, but it may go to a jury that even that wasn't enough. That somehow that it continued showed that the school hadn't done enough. So when you ask me, how can this happen in a liberal, progressive state like Connecticut, it's hard to believe, but kids are kids, and a lot of them are knuckleheads, and sometimes people, professionals running schools, don't do all they should do. They're human. I'm going to be speaking about bullying in New Haven in a month for administrators who want sort of intensive training on what is my legal responsibility actually in these cases. There are going to be 4 of us lawyers running through
like a symposium or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, this is the law, ladies and gentlemen. This is, of course, most school districts have really good lawyers of their own training them.
But aren't they usually, they come in with a fire, or it's just about a fire?
Well, yeah.
There's a smoke going on, at least a heavy smoke going on.
I suppose that's true. I suppose that's true. I would hope, though, I know that from the lawyers on the other side of the cases from me, that they work hard at trying to get their teachers and administrators to know what they should be doing, but they're not always successful because people slip up here and there, or there's differences of opinion about what someone should have done, what someone could have done.
Now, you mentioned sexual harassment. What exactly what's going on? Is it the teacher versus the student? Is it the student initiated, or is the teacher initiated? Or is it student versus student, or is it a combination of all of the above?
It's mostly student against student.
Student against student.
I know of cases in the last 10 years in towns in Connecticut where it was a teacher who, in one case, been doing it for years, making inappropriate comments, touching people when he shouldn't have been, and the students got in touch with the Office of Civil Rights in Boston, and they came and investigated and said, you guys have been not keeping an eye on this guy. At which point the girls hired a private attorney to sue them for violation of Title IX, which is the federal law that, you know, in sport we're most likely to think of guaranteeing women places in sports, but it also basically says women have a right to anything without sexual discrimination, including a high school education. And so this guy was violating their federal civil rights. Most of the time, though, it's, at least so far for me, it's professionally, it's been one student to another, and it often involves some kind of serious sexual assault off school grounds that there then comes into play on school grounds. Someone hears about something that's happened off school grounds, and being kids, brings it onto school grounds in a way, and then the victim starts to suffer because she can't or he can't do school because of what people are saying to him or her in school, and teachers and administrators have to.
And you have a snowball effect.
Yeah, and they have to step on it hard, and so but the school has to show that they've disregarded, that they've ignored what's happening. It's one thing to say if a student with a disability feels like the school is hostile the first time it happens. That's one thing. It's another thing to say that a school has ignored the problem. that's kind of the standard they're being held to in the sexual harassment cases.
Believe it or not, we're down to a couple of minutes here.
You're kidding.
And if you have a website that you'd like to...
I do. It's with a name like Smith. It's easy to find me.
Okay.
But www.smith-attorney.com.
Okay. There's... You have some information there for people that...
I do. There's
okay.
it's
And we had another point here. I wanted to
Spare.
ask you about the disabled, what happens
with
with
disabled
disabled cases.
Well, I represent kids and special needs kids when they want services from the school district. I get a lot of calls from people. Concussions lately have been on people's minds, and
They get concussions from their activities?
they get
in the sports
concussions.
side?
But as it turns out, there's often something else involved in it, like they're picking on them, and
And they get the concussion because they're geting picked on, not
Yeah.
necessarily that they don't have the right equipment.
and that's pretty serious.
Like in football, they use the helmet like a malice or whatever, as opposed to it's only supposed to be an incidental hit, and then it works. But when it's being used that way as a direct hit, then they're going to have a concussion and have serious problems.
And if the coach is not looking, kids can do pretty violent things to each other,
Break ribs, all kinds of things.
knock you out.
Right.
And
And that has lasting damage, like the professional football people complain and go on and on.
that again is whether if 4 football players are give another one a concussion because they're picking on them, the question is, will the school be liable?
So we're down to 30 seconds. So is there maybe wrap things up in 10 seconds or 20 seconds, or otherwise they're going to start waving to me.
I can say that I know that
They're waving to me.
they're
So
waving. Not even 30.
That was we did a good job. So anyway, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in the Community Forum. Tune in next week, same time, same station, and I'm sure we'll have an interesting program. Good night for now, and we'll see you then.